You will never grow within the comfort zone. You will never reach your full potential as a human within the comfort zone. The comfort zone kills. The comfort zone creates false security, a false sense of well-being. If you want growth, if you want full potential, you must learn to push yourself beyond yourself. You must learn to push yourself beyond the natural pull within you to live comfortable, to live average, to live within the limits and boundaries. You must be willing to push, day after day after day. Push yourself. When you feel like it and when you don't. When you're motivated and when you're not. Push yourself. You have the push within you. If you want it, go get it. And with that being read, I want to welcome you back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is the owner of Push Gym in Denver, Colorado. He is also a physical therapist, husband, and dad. Today's guest is Marty Lavine. Martin, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Marty, I just kind of want to jump into a little bit of a warm-up, kind of to kick things off for the podcast and for myself and the listeners. So the first question that I have for you is, how do you start your day, and is there some sort of morning routine that you like to stick to most of the time?
I do have a routine, and easily if I go away or if I'm not home, I'm not set in stone with it, so it's not that I'm married to it. But I set my alarm for 4:50 every morning, even if I don't have to be over here for a couple hours. But I like to get up, make a cup of coffee, black coffee, no sugar, no cream, just like the Cowboys drank it. And kind of look at my day, whether I'm doing some personal training or seeing physical therapy clients, and clear out the email and just make sure that my day's planned out.
Okay, cool.
And even on the weekends, I'll kind of do the same. I've learned to set my alarm, because otherwise I don't know what time it is. I'm not a great sleeper.
Right.
If I set it, then I know that I won't sleep too late, I guess.
Sure.
I don't want to sleep. It's not like I'm sleeping late, but I don't want to dig into the morning. So I like to get up and start the day that way.
Cool. Now, along with the coffee, do you ever have a bite to eat, or do you kind of just do maybe some intermittent fasting, or what does that kind of look like?
I generally don't eat when I get up,
Okay.
and up until about a year ago, I would have breakfast an hour or two later after I woke up. I don't like to eat right away, but I have jumped into a little bit of intermittent fasting, and I won't eat until either a late breakfast or right till lunch.
Okay, cool.
And I found that I feel better as the day goes on.
Absolutely.
As that's happened for whatever reason. I'm not losing any weight. I wasn't trying to lose weight. I just feel better.
Yeah, I know.
It's a crazy thing.
I know intermittent fasting within the kind of the health and fitness industry has really kind of become a big thing, and I've done it myself, and I've heard overall pretty positive things. Even if you're not trying to lose weight, it seems like, I know for me, trying to have a meal before I go work out in the morning, it doesn't always feel the best. So because the food that you have the day before and the night before, it's still in there. It's not like you're not going to have any energy or whatever.
Glycogen stores are loaded.
Exactly.
I figured this out a couple years ago, that I started noticing this is this morning. For example, I get up and drink my coffee for an hour and a half, get some paperwork, and on Sunday mornings I usually go run stairs.
Okay.
So I go to some places downtown, the Capitol, or some buildings downtown that have some outdoor stairs. Mm-hmm. And I'd run the stairs. It takes an hour and a half time I walk and come back. And I was finding that I wasn't hungry yet.
Right.
And I had great energy, even though it was maybe 8 or 9 in the morning. And I'm like, well, I don't really need to eat something. I feel better. I'm exercising more vigorously and not having any kind of bonking. And so that kind of kicked that off for me.
Yep. No, that's great. And I think that's something for the listeners to know. And it's always a good reminder, kind of, we're our own experiment, you know what I mean? We all have different reactions to different foods, and a lot of times in health and fitness, people are like, oh, you got to stick to the keto diet, or you got to be a vegan, or it's like, hey, all of our bodies are very different, and you have to kind of be your own advocate, and you've got to try what foods, what philosophies are going to work best for you. Because from digestion to kind of the brain fog and the brain function, every person's body reacts differently to different foods.
Oh, yeah.
And even like coffee and different supplements. It's like you kind of got to be the scientist with your own body, right?
Your own case study.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So that's a good point and a good reminder for myself and the listeners out there. So the second question I have for you, Marty, in regards to the warm-up is, do you have a favorite book, or is there a book that you like to gift often?
I don't know if I have one favorite. I do often direct people to the couple of Michael Pollan books on food.
Okay.
If that's for health and fitness, I just think they're great histories of how food is brought to this country and how we look at it and how it was, there's one section in, I think, Botany of Desire. He talks about the history of the apple, which is just completely interesting to me, right?
Yeah.
Where they spliced them all together and all that. So I like to tell people to read those. But then I also like the Malcolm Gladwell stories, of very interesting kind of tidbits of life of, he goes through the whole 10,000 hours, how Bill Gates did those and how the Beatles practiced those 10,000.
Absolutely.
Really fun reads.
Cool.
And it's kind of often, it's not really, it's apolitical. It's not, it's not fitness. It's just kind of fun to read.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'm not a big novel reader. I like reading history. And
that's great.
I do have one book that I tell people particularly to read, which is called Last Call. And it's the history of prohibition in America. Okay. Which sounds, it's like just about drinking, but he goes back and it's the best American history book around, because he goes way back before, like 100 years before prohibition, all about what was going on in America and how the tax thing came into it and all the different pieces of society came to bear the fruits of prohibition. Very good read. Cool. Excellent history book. So.
And that's called Last Call. Okay, very good. Sweet. Very good.
Fun read.
Okay.
I think it's fun.
That's great.
Somebody else may not enjoy.
Yeah, well,
they may enjoy a romance novel or something.
No, that's great. But this is your episode, your story. So that's great. And there's probably a lot of people out there that might be like, hey, I read that book, or I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, it's
similar interests, So
it's excellent history book. So.
Cool. So all right. So the last question we have in regards to the warm up is there a favorite quote or mantra, maybe from the past or maybe presently or maybe throughout your life, that's really been valuable for you?
I don't know that I have it. It's funny, you said something in your introduction where you said push yourself, and that's kind of painted on my wall here.
Right.
And I don't like people to injure themselves, but I do say push yourself. Try a little harder.
Absolutely.
Stay focused. But push yourself is a hashtag we use for all our any kind of social media stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't sit here and say it to people, but that is kind of our little logo. And it's funny you said that in your warm-up.
Yeah. Well, I mean that was something that I wrote up today, and I mean obviously we've never we've communicated through email, but we've never met each other. But just Push Gym. I figured it had something to do with like pushing yourself and kind of. So I just kind of wrote that.
Yeah,
but
it's good.
No, Marty. In regards to like pushing yourself, I just want to touch on kind of the whole mental side of things, because a lot of times, I think the mind will take us a lot further than our body is willing to go. Is that something that you kind of concur with or agree with, or not?
Yeah, I think we tend to fall into traps of I can only do so much, and that you can do more. Like the whole intermittent fasting thing has changed a lot of my vision of this. Like you always think I'm hungry in the morning and I can't function. I won't be able to function without it. And you're like, why not? Mm-hmm. And so it is deep. And I quote this a lot with people, and I tell people this, but this goes back in time, and I'm an old guy. But you ever see the movie Papillon?
No, I've never even heard of it.
It's a Steve McQueen movie, and he's a prisoner on Devil's Island or wherever it is in this French prison, and he gets put in solitary confinement, and he practices, and he gets put in this little room, and he walks back and forth across it, and it's like 8 feet across, and all he can do is take 8 steps, and he walks outside, and he takes 8 steps and falls over, because that's about all he could. That's all he got used to doing.
Right.
And so you have to be able to not stop yourself when that occurs. You got to be able to mentally get past it. Not that he couldn't, because he would walk back and forth. It wasn't that he couldn't go that far because he was trying to stay active, but that was his
that was kind of his limit in his mind, right?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's just something that I've come to discover is that, you know, the mind is very, very powerful, and we, like, I don't control your mind, you don't control my mind. Like, if we can learn kind of how to control it, we have control over our thoughts, we have control over our mind, and when we learn to control our thoughts and our mind, like, that's what we're gonna act, that's what we're gonna be, and we're gonna become. So I just think it's important, you know, that whole kind of mantra of push yourself is like, you know, push yourself mentally, and that's only going to help you push yourself physically. I personally believe and have experienced. So very good. So let's kind of transition into the younger years, Marty. Kind of just like, if you don't mind sharing, like, where did you grow up? Kind of like what the home life was like. If you don't mind just kind of sharing that backstory a little bit, and then we'll kind of just transition through high school and college, and then kind of where things are at with Push Gym and who you are today. So
just two main tiers. So before I was 5, my mom was a single parent. She had divorced, left my dad when I was 2. He was in Vietnam and wasn't very stable. Yeah. And it was a bad deal. So we had lived in, I'd lived in like 6 or 7 states.
Wow.
So bounced around a lot, and ended up in Denver in 1971. Okay. So I don't have any recollection really of any of the other stuff other than some vague visual, you know, looking where we lived in our place in Skokie, Illinois, and other than that I don't recall.
Yeah.
But we landed here, and so we just stayed here.
Okay.
And basically lived in South Central Denver since 1971. I bounced around the different neighborhoods of Denver, but went to all my schools in South Denver and South High School, and just with a single parent. She had a couple of boyfriends along the way that's were there, but it was I have an older brother who's 2.5 years older than me, and when I turned 15, he went off to college and never came back.
Oh wow!
So we still talk when we're close, but he just picked up and left and didn't want to come back.
That's
so
probably what he needed in his life, right? At that time.
Oh yeah. Kind of a hard to describe how the going to school, like the way that my mom was just kind of a hippie.
Yeah.
She'll tell you that too. So we didn't go to public schools. We went to like a kind of an open care school that was just like free learning. She didn't really believe, she's a teacher, and she didn't believe in sitting at a desk and learning rote memorization.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, it was good for a while. I got to 7th grade and it was over. I had to go to public school, and I couldn't write a complete sentence, and I still have trouble.
Okay.
With grammar, it's still like it never settled in. I didn't know how to add or subtract when I got to 7th grade. And I could read a little bit, but I overcame a lot of that and kind of taught myself. I didn't know how to write cursive, a whole lot of stuff. So I kind of taught myself a little bit along the way and struggled through junior high and high school and public schools, and fared reasonably well, caught up in math for sure, but reading and writing skills are horrible.
I just want to interject here for a second. I want to just take a step back. So, like this first experience up to 7th grade, you said it was kind of like a free or open kind of school type setting. So, I mean, can you just explain that a little bit more? Because in my mind it sounds great, but then you're saying you went to 7th grade like public school, and then you were maybe like a first grade level. So did they not really focus on the academics or what?
There was some, like if you wanted to, you could.
Oh, okay.
Which was hard, and I remember doing some stuff, but it wasn't like real intense, and there was a lot of time for free play and socialization.
Okay.
But I don't remember like sitting down to read, because they didn't believe in. It wasn't that they didn't want you to learn. It wasn't like the no school. It was school, and there were lessons, and we did field trips, but I don't remember a lot of like, all right, we're gonna have math time.
Right.
And I remember learning some of the basics, but it wasn't a real aggressive. And so I got later, I was like, all right, I don't know how to do any of this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And I figured it out pretty quick.
Yeah.
But reading and writing, like we didn't sit down to do grammar books. They didn't believe in the way that was taught. But it wasn't taught. I don't remember anyone like grabbing you and saying you need to do this. It was just not part of the day. So and it's becoming vaguer as I get older. Like what really happened is harder to remember of what I did day to day. It's just fading a little bit.
For sure. No, I understand it. But it sounds like, because like I'm a middle school teacher, and obviously I'm passionate about health and fitness. I'm a PE teacher, and things of that nature. I'm passionate about youth and all that. And that's kind of like when you first said, I was like, dude, because I would love at some point to like start a school and it focused around health and fitness and outdoors. Yeah. But it sounds like maybe they went to the extreme of kind of that freedom and free play and kind of roaming around and finding yourself, or however you want to word it, maybe the hippie little bit too woo, I don't know, but because you got to have the academics. You don't want to, you don't want to not be able to read and write, because that's not going to be productive for anybody.
It was a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah,
And I'd look back, and I don't know how most of the other kids did coming out of there. I lost track of some of them. I knew some of them along the way.
Yeah.
This was in the early 70s, though.
Right,
So it was a different time.
For sure, yeah.
When I started there, Vietnam War was still going on.
Right.
So, and through the whole, Nixon was still president.
Yep. Yeah. So you grew up in a pretty interesting era of our country then, huh?
Yeah. No, I remember coming home from school some days and the Watergate hearings were on. So didn't know what it was. You're like, oh, Gilligan's Island's not on. Why not?
Right. Yeah. Well, and something kind of similar for myself, being 31, is like when I was in I believe 8th grade when like 9/11 happened. So that was kind of like you got these towers falling and it's everywhere on TV. It's like, what's going on? So obviously it's a little bit different than like Watergate and Vietnam, but just for my age group of people, that was kind of like that turning point. Like I know, like for my mom, it was like, where were you, Mom, when JFK was murdered? You know what I mean? So just kind of some of those milestone things that when you're a kid, like even in 8th grade, I didn't even know what the World Trade Centers were. I didn't even grasp until I was a little bit older. But I guess that's for my generation, my age, can kind of relate with like some of those historical things that were going on, So Marty, let's just, if you don't mind, so you got into 7th grade, you're kind of realizing like, hey, I'm really behind academically, but you said you kind of were able to catch up a little bit in some of the areas. What did high school look like for you, and then were you involved in like sports or any extracurricular activities within high school?
Well, a couple of fold things here. So junior high was, I had a love of basketball.
Okay.
So I played basketball all the time.
Cool.
And tried to keep up on my homework. In 7th and 8th grade, I was definitely more vigorous than 9th grade because you kind of get a little jaded by that point.
Right.
I had grown up mostly with all white kids, and the school was half black.
Yeah.
So I became, and at first it was really weird. Like, a lot of the kids didn't like you because you were white, and I didn't get it. I didn't understand it, but I befriended, but most of my friends at that time became African-American kids, and we were all the same.
Yeah,
at one point, once we got past the initial stage. So that was nice, and that floated through high school too, and I still loved to play basketball, but I was too much of a, by the point the hippie world had hit me, and I had become quite the drug addict.
Okay.
Through middle school, most likely.
Okay.
Definitely in high school.
Yeah.
And so organized sports were not fitting in my lifestyle. I tried to try for the basketball team my junior year. I played a little bit in 9th grade, and I hurt my back. I don't remember how. And I played, and I went out my junior year, and coach cut me, which was, I still think was just stupid because he was a dumb coach.
Right.
He should have kept me because I was a good player, and he could have used me for 2 years, and they were no good, and so never picked up. I still play. I played basketball until about 2 years ago, like aggressively. So I have the skill set for it. But,
right.
I just wasn't in the mode, and I played baseball my senior year.
Okay.
And we were real good. We had a good team.
Cool.
And so that was my sporting world. But I had definitely the other side of the world at the time had dominated most of school, and so school was secondary. I made it through classes the best I could. I remember I had a creative of writing class. It was just horrendous. I barely could get through it. It was like all I could do to write a paper. I mean, the hardest you didn't have the internet. You didn't have resources. You didn't have spell check. You didn't have anything. You had an old typewriter. And so it was really a struggle. My handwriting was terrible. I got through Algebra 2, never took another math class again. Mm-hmm. So I kind of simplified my way through the rest of high school. Yeah. And, you go talk to your counselor, and they're like, what do you want to do? And you're like, I don't know. I don't want to go to college. And then you never see them again because they don't really care.
Right.
And it's a different time.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom cared, but she didn't really, I don't know what she was doing, not following me, or she'll tell you that, and if she listens to this, she'll know this. She'll say, I just wouldn't talk to her. And then I didn't answer her. I would just walk away. So we'll take responsibility for all of that. And, but so I got to 18, got out of high school, took the SAT one time, did horribly. Probably stayed up all night before. And, kind of took some time off.
Before we get past high school and all that, I just wanna ask you, was there because you didn't have like a strong male figure in your life, did that cause something inside of you? Maybe like when you were younger, if you went over to somebody's house and they had a dad, or you had maybe a coach or some sort of male teacher or something like that, and was there something that maybe you think maybe caused some struggle within you because you didn't have that male influence?
I don't know. My mom ended up having a boyfriend from probably 75 to 83, and he moved in with us, and he was I'd go play baseball with him. Okay. He's not your dad, right?
Yeah.
I'm 10 whenever I met him or whatever, and so he wasn't that, and I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I had a concern for what other kids' parents were doing.
Okay.
It just didn't click with me. I didn't really care. And it's hard. I mean, some of this stuff is becoming more cloudy. Again, it's weird as I get older. My memory's pretty. I can remember days and time. I have a pretty good timeline, but some of the nuances of some of that stuff I don't remember as well.
Yeah, no, I understand. And so, if you don't mind, Marty, too, just touch on a little bit. Like, where did the whole, when and where did that whole kind of like the hippie drug culture kind of come in for you? Was it kind of around junior high, and was that because you saw some of that maybe in your home environment, or kind of what did that look like? Because I want to touch on that because, I mean, there's a lot of people, maybe not necessarily like the hippie culture, hippies, but just drugs is something that a lot of people struggle with, and especially now, like in our country and our culture, like the prescription drugs. I've interviewed some veterans, and I know one of them, he got addicted to prescription drugs because that's what they gave him when he got injured fighting for our country over in the Middle East. So if you don't mind, if the memory's there for all that, just unpack kind of like when that happened, where it happened, and kind of like what that looked like, because it sounds like you said, school wasn't really your thing. The sports thing didn't work out, but it sounds like, the drugs were there, that hippie culture, and I'm sure that's kind of where your friends were at, and that's where you kind of fit in. So
a little mix of it all. My mom's not a big drinker or pot smoker. It's not very much part of her life.
Yeah.
Other than a little bit in the 60s and 70s, but it really didn't dominate it. She didn't do it in front of us, and she was not that way. My brother, on the other hand, was a little bit of a ruckus.
Okay.
Creature, and so he's a couple years older than me, and so you kind of see that.
Yeah.
And I do have a clear memory. Sorry, I was opposite. I was thinking of a different term, but
you're good.
Seeing, and this dates me also. Star Wars came out in 1977.
Right.
I was 11, and I remember our cousin, and I forget his name, took my brother and I to go see it, and we smoked some marijuana on the way to see it. And I'm 11, so it's kind of like this thing that it's shiny, and it's something to do. And we used to still smoking cigarettes. I remember smoking cigarettes when I was 8 or 9, but they were different too. They were everywhere.
Right.
Yeah. In wood shop and metal shop in junior high, you were making ashtrays to take home and put on the table.
Right.
So the timing is different. But I think my brother and some of his friends were quite ruckus, and I remember thinking that was cool, and so next thing you know, you're smoking pot all the time, and it just became habit. Then you kind of throw a little alcohol in it, and then cocaine by the time I was probably 15 is really the shiniest of all the objects.
Right.
And it takes over, your thought process a little bit.
Right.
And so that all kind of blended together, and then some of the friends I had did and some didn't, and then you kind of find the ones that do the same thing as well over time. And so I don't know that I had one avenue to it, but there was a few things around. But
it sounds like there was opportunities for that around you, and there was definitely a culture of that around you, and that just kind of pulled you in or sucked you in, and it's like, all right, here we go. I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. The basement life of South Denver in the early '80s and late '70s was definitely in that life.
So was there because I know during that time in our culture and our American history, there was some pretty solid bands coming out. So was there kind of a band or two that you really enjoyed, or that you still enjoy to this day from that era?
Oh yeah, I was a big Boston fan.
Okay, cool.
I still like some of it. The Cars.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
The Police were big back then, but I liked all the old rock. I was a full-on Beatles, Led Zeppelin. I had all the Zeppelin music.
Cool.
But at the time, it's not that old.
Right.
Some of that stuff was only in the Who.
Yeah.
Who's Next was had 10 years old or whatever. So if you take something from 10 years ago, it's not that old.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. It was definitely the Talking Heads kind of popped in right at that point, and you're like, they're a little different, but they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
Definitely was not a disco fan. That was we were anti-disco. We liked Leonard Skinner. We liked that kind of the classic rock scene.
Cool, man. Yeah.
So it's funny. Both my older kid more than my younger one started listening to it sometimes. She's like, this stuff's really good, without me saying a word.
Right.
And with the way that is now with Pandora and Spotify, they can pick up anything.
Oh yeah.
So my older daughter's favorite thing is Lou Reed and Velvet Underground. Like, I didn't even listen to that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, I mean, nowadays with the internet and our smartphones, I mean, YouTube and all this different stuff. Like you can get literally anything you want, music wise, and every other category of whatever. But it is kind of cool though that you can type in the Beatles on YouTube and see old film and concerts. It is cool though. I mean, I obviously like social media and the internet and all that is a big part of my life, and that's the reason why we're sitting here, with the whole podcast thing. But that's cool.
There was a record store on the corner of 13th and Washington called Wax Trax. It's still there, but it's different. But it was all vinyl at the time, because everything was vinyl.
Yeah.
And there were some cassettes, but they had you could take your records there or buy used ones for 50 cents. So you'd sort through them, come home with who knows what. I had a huge collection of old vinyl records.
That's awesome.
Cream and Cream is Eric Clapton.
Cool.
Some other bands similar to that.
Yeah. So because you really enjoyed basketball when you were younger, and then still a basketball fan to this day, and living in Denver all these years, are the Nuggets kind of your team, or are you a pretty big sports guy, Broncos, all that? Or
oh yeah, I love the Nuggets.
Cool.
Mad they lost last night.
Yeah, no, I saw that on my phone yesterday. So I'm like, oh, dude, they had first time in 6 years they've been in the playoffs, and then they lost their first game. I'm like, oh, come on, guys.
Yeah, no, I love the Nuggets. I remember in junior high, my buddy and I lived down the street from me. We did school one day, and there was something happening downtown, and I can't remember what it was, but David Thompson, who was a big Nugget, and Dan Issel and Bobby Jones were down there signing autographs, and it was like the coolest thing ever. So
yeah, for sure. That's great. I'm assuming you've been to some Nuggets games and stuff then over the years?
Oh yeah, on and off. I went last week actually. I hadn't been for a couple of years. It's I've lost a little bit of interest in going to sporting events. I think they're way overpriced for value, and it's not that I don't have money to go do that. I just don't think it's a wise investment in funds, and I don't. It's way out of sync with the average person in society. It's really hard to do that. And football games. And I said I was doing all the drugs and alcohol, but and we can get to this later. But I've been sober for a long time.
Yeah.
And I don't like going to a Bronco game because everyone's drunk around me. It's obnoxious.
That's how. I've been to quite a few NFL games. I'm from Iowa, so we used to go for like 4 or 5 years in a row. We go to Kansas City Chiefs games, and that's what it is. It's just a bunch of drunk
Yeah.
people yelling, screaming
And
craziness, and
and-
especially if you got kids, it's like
I know.
I would if I had my own kids, I wouldn't want them in that environment.
Yeah.
You know,
And
it's
yeah,
it's trashy. So
It is, and it's the TV experience of watching an NFL game is much better.
exactly. For
They've
sure.
made it so good.
They have.
But there
yeah.
is something fun to be sitting in the
There
stands
is,
if it's
you're
a good
right.
game. But
Mhm.
I don't go out of my way to go.
No, that's cool.
So
That's
yeah,
cool.
and,
Yeah. All right. Well, let's. So we kind of stopped like when you were at 18. So let's just start unpacking kind of the post high school, and then let's just kind of keep the ball rolling in that direction, Marty.
all right. So college, I took a little time off, did some community college, and
Yep.
I had a buddy that from my high school, I was a little bit older than me. That went to Arizona State University. And he's
Okay.
like, you got to come down here, take a look, because he knew I was doing nothing. So I flew down there. Again, there's no cell phones. There's no, you don't look on the internet and see what the Arizona State's website looks like.
Right.
Flew down there for a weekend, and I know this for a fact. The week I went it was 1984 presidential election week,
Okay.
and I didn't vote because I was gone.
Right.
And I didn't realize I could do an absentee, and I just turned 18 a couple months earlier. I haven't missed a voting since.
Okay.
Whether it's a local or any election, I've not missed one since.
Right,
I was
right,
mad at
right.
myself, so I make sure that I don't do that.
Yeah.
And it was, again, it's a big shiny object down there, and so I signed up and I went the following fall.
Okay.
And somehow I got in. My SAT scores were horrible, so I applied, got in. They said, we need your SAT scores, and I can't remember how it happened. I spent a semester there getting drunk every single day,
Right.
playing frisbee golf and eating chicken wings and gaining 10 pounds.
There you go.
And I told myself that was not the place to be.
Yeah.
I came home, and by the time I left, I had got 12 credits of classes from Arizona State without ever giving them test scores. So I don't know how, I still don't know how that happened. So next thing you know, I come back here, I've got a couple community college credits,
Right.
a semester under my belt at ASU, went back to Metropolitan State College, and all they needed was that I had some grades from another school. So that got me in there, and before I know it, I had 20-some credits, and I applied to Colorado State University.
Okay.
And they didn't really care about my SAT or ACT scores at the time, so because they weren't good enough to get into any big college at all. But they had just took those as acceptance. So for a 2-year period, I think I had maybe like 24, 25 credits or something like that. I can't remember the number. So I went to my mom had sent me to a career counselor guy down here in the intern after I got back from Arizona, and kind of came up with a plan of exercise science, and CSU had a program, and I had some buddies up there, so I applied and got in and moved in with a couple of my high school buddies.
Okay.
We're still friends to this day.
Right.
Close.
Cool.
And started a couple years of exercise science degree.
Okay.
2 years in, I was still kind of wandering around, not really doing much, still drinking and doing a lot of no good fraternity stuff, dumb stuff like that. And I went to a career fair in the gym one day, and there was a physical therapy table from the University of Colorado, and so I got the pamphlet, took it back home, and read through it and called and figured out that was probably the closest thing I could figure out that would get me somewhere where I needed to be.
Right. Yeah.
And at the time, it was a master's degree.
Cool.
So they had some requirements, and at this point, I'm almost 22.
Okay.
And I figured I better get serious. And if you ask people today, they're like, how did you square your own self away? And I don't know. I think it's just something I needed. I needed to kind of zero in on something. I was floating around, doing nothing important for a long time.
Yep.
I mean, you look back to me going to see Star Wars, smoking pot in 1977, and this is 1988,
right.
1987, 88. And
almost
it's just
been a decade,
and it's been a whole decade of just ups and downs of riffraff and whatever, and figured it was probably time to kind of figure it out. I didn't quit drinking, but I was just like, all right, I got to figure it out. So looked up the requirements. I had to change the not my major, but the kind of the concentration of it.
Yep.
And I had to pick up a couple classes that weren't on my original list. And I had to do some summer work to make sure I finished within a reasonable amount of time. And I had 2 years after that point when I figured that out, and I got all A's, physics, organic chem.
Wow.
I can't remember what else I took. Developmental biology, cardiopulmonary physiology, all the high-end exercise level classes, straight A's.
Wow.
I had to get my GPA up because they needed a 3.5 to get into grad school.
What did you start off with? What was it?
It wasn't very good, yeah. But I ended up with like a 3.44.
Awesome. Okay.
After that.
Yeah.
So 6 years with a couple summers, I graduated from college.
That's awesome.
Reasonably well.
Yeah.
So I pulled myself out of a rut.
Yep. Yeah.
Which was good.
Now, I just want to interject here really quick. Because to me, just on my end, my bachelor's degree is in exercise science, but just kind of with your lifestyle and where you were at when you were in high school and everything, it's a little funny to me that somehow you kind of walked into exercise science, and it sounds like there was maybe a mentor or a counselor that kind of helped you get there. But once you kind of got into the exercise science classes and being a part of that, did you enjoy kind of the whole exercise thing, or was it just like, hey, this is kind of the route I'm going to take, and we're just gonna go for it?
Yeah, you know, as much as the riffraff we did, there was a gym 2 blocks from my house when I was just not far from here, Harvard Gulch.
Okay.
So I lived on basically in Platt Park, near Evans and Downing, Evans and Loganish.
Okay.
So not far from here. Harvard Gulch is 2 blocks away. I was there every day shooting baskets and lifting weights.
Perfect. See, this is what I want. We got to dig into this because this is a big part of who you are.
I never stopped playing basketball.
Okay, cool.
And we played flag football. I played baseball that year.
Yeah.
And then we played softball leagues. And I always. That's funny. My friends would call me Basketball Jones because I was only, I'd go after school or wherever during class or whenever I knew there were games going on to the gym and playing hoop.
Yep.
Whether however long it took, however many games I could get in. So it was always about still staying fit, and even when I, in all those couple of years in between, like when I wasn't working, I'd go down to Inglewood Rec Center and play hoop, or go over to Eisenhower Rec Center and sneak in a game whenever I could, against whoever I could. And I'm not the biggest guy. I'm 6'1". A little skinnier back then. Yeah. But I was wily and could play, and you get good and you get better. And so, but you have to stay fit to do that.
Absolutely.
And I tell people this to the day. A lot of my weightlifting stuff that I've done over the years, I said I did some of it, my plyometric stuff, because I wanted to be better at basketball.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, a lot of the things I teach people on how to move and how to do things, it's like how to use your body, how to use your center of gravity a little better, and so
So when it sounds like towards the end of high school is when you actually were like started lifting weights at this gym. Is that kind of where that started?
Well, we even through junior high, there was a weight room right next to it's old school stuff.
Right, and that's why it kind of surprised me because
you do lat pull, you do a couple of bench presses,
the bodybuilding
stuff, and then even into high school we did a little bit of that, and then in college I definitely did a lot.
Okay, cool.
And then PT school we did a ton of it.
Yeah. So there was some sort of foundation or interest in your life through basketball, and then being exposed to lifting weights at a pretty young age of health and fitness. Then even though you were doing whatever you were doing with the drugs and just kind of being wild and crazy, but there was a component in your life from a very young age of fitness and health, right?
Since day one.
Yeah.
I remember.
So then once you got into the exercise science classes, then I'm sure you probably enjoyed them on some level, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That was very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so you're got your GPA up to like a 3.44, but you needed to get to a 3.5. So did you have to do some extra work, or did they kind of just say, hey, you know what, that's good enough?
Yeah, I think they fudge it. And
Yeah.
I mean, they go, okay, and they look at your last 2 years, and they go, okay, he had some trouble, and then he did better.
Right. So then you get accepted into PT school. And where was that? Was that University of Colorado in Boulder? Or?
It's called the University. Well, they changed names, and I forget what to call it now. But it was University of Colorado Health Science Center.
Okay.
And I forget, it was like 400 or 500 kids apply. I applied one year, didn't get in. Applied again the next year, and I got in out of I think 56 students out of over 400 or 500 applications. So I I had shown that I was gotten better. I did some internships. I worked as an assistant at a couple of different places and put in a lot of hours of not really volunteer, but showing that you're doing what you need to do to learn the business to get in.
You're proving yourself. Yeah.
So they let me in.
Cool. No, that's great. And I think that's just a powerful part of your story is that, kind of all this wandering around, whatever, and then at some point you kind of had this inner pull to.
Sir, come on in. Excuse me. Pause it just for a second.
I just need to get this.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
Sorry.
So, but just there was at some point, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, but like at some point there was like something inside where you just said you kind of pulled yourself up by the bootstraps and said, I gotta change. Something's got to give here. So I think that's just really powerful. That whatever that was, and can you put your finger on that, or was it just kind of like, dude, I've kind of wasted a lot of my life, and I just got to take care of my business now. Is that kind of what it was, Marty? Or okay, cool.
My mom she's very nice, but there wasn't a lot of discussion amongst either one of us.
Yeah.
And I didn't talk to my brother.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, not that he wouldn't help. They wouldn't help, and it just wasn't. It was just
more internal in your own mindset. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So, how long was PT school? Is that like 2 or 3 years?
It was 2 years back then.
Okay. And then once you graduate with your master's in physical therapy. Is that kind of what it is, or called? Or?
And 10 years later, they turned most of the programs around the country. CU was about it was like 03, 04. They turned into an entry-level doctorate.
Okay, cool.
So, but
Very cool.
Skipped that.
Okay.
That was an extra year I didn't have to deal with.
Yeah. Well, probably an extra money too, right?
Oh yeah.
Because man, I mean, just with my undergraduate degree, thousands and thousands of dollars, and it's just like, man. And obviously back then it was a little bit cheaper than it was when I was going, but still, it's just it's just tough. But okay, so you graduate from physical therapy school, get your master's degree. What happens next?
I got a job. So we got married in the middle of that.
Okay.
We got married right before I got into school. This semester, the 6 months before I started school.
Okay.
We had, I still think people do this today, but I had an offer. You start looking for a job or whatever, and I got a job offer from this guy that they will pay off a portion of your student loans if you work for him for 2 years.
Yeah, that's great.
And I said, sounds good. It wasn't far away, and it was a cool sound. Just here's patients. Learn how to treat patients. So I took the job, and I stayed with that company for 6 years.
Okay.
And they within a year they moved me to kind of this head center place. It was a work comp company, and they had a bunch of satellite clinics. And if people had trouble at some of the satellite clinics in therapy or in rehab, they sent them to this centralized place, which is down in what's called Diamond Hill, which is right by Elitch's. And after working for them a little over a year, they sent me over there because they thought I had a pretty good skill set and was good with people. So
awesome.
They put me there, and I ended up staying there for 4 or 5 years, and you learn a lot because you deal with a lot of issues.
Right. Yeah.
And they paid for great continuing education. They were amazing to me. So I took a ton of classes over the time and learned a ton. But when I decided to quit, it was a complicated thing because my wife's a school teacher too, or she was back then.
Okay.
And the salary structure at this place was just not very good. They just don't pay.
It's still not very good for teachers, that's for sure. It's tough.
And for PTs with a master's degree, they were not paying that much.
Okay, yeah.
And there was no real raise. They're like, well, you didn't meet your bonus this year. I'm like, or you didn't meet your quota this year. I'm like, well, I only saw the people you sent me.
Exactly, yeah.
But they're business people not knowing that, not understanding, like, well, you only saw X amount of patients. I'm like, well, they're the patients you sent me.
Right.
Send me some more if you want me to see them, so that you get a little bit jaded.
Yeah.
And they'll as business people, I still think it's stupid to treat people that way.
Yeah.
So I wasn't getting any raises.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, and this is for all the people that don't understand healthcare industry, blaming it on Obama, whether you like him or not. my healthcare costs were going up, so I was actually making less.
Wow.
Like my fifth year was less than my first or second year.
Wow.
Because of the way that those costs were coming in. So this is in the mid. This is like 2001, 2000.
Okay.
99, 2000.
Right.
So for everyone that is listening, if you think the problem is Obamacare, you're way wrong. It is not.
Right. Yeah.
It is not. The healthcare industry has been a disaster for a while, and I was in the midst of it.
Mm-hmm.
And whether I was treating or being treated with whatever, so it was best if I quit. We had two little kids.
Right.
One of us had to quit to stay home, and my wife had a much easier schedule because, they had summers off.
Yep.
And they had long breaks. So if I quit and I started my own little training personal therapy business I found this guy's gym over in a neighborhood called Belcaro, that I could start seeing some people at nights and on weekends. I could slowly start to build some business while I'm staying home with my kids. So we took a hit financially, just having one big income, but my wife had this extra time off.
Right.
So that happened, and my younger daughter was 1. So August of 2000, I quit my job after being there for 6 years.
Right. Now, before we go any further, was there a lot of inner struggle and kind of turmoil for you, kind of having that job security and quitting, or not?
Very brief.
Okay. You just kind of like, this is what I need to do, and I'm going to do it?
Yeah.
Cool.
I we didn't talk about this much, but having kids and not having a very structured early part of my life.
Right.
I'm home. I quit drinking a couple years earlier. I'm hanging with my kids. That was like the most important thing. So
absolutely.
There was a little nervousness at the time, but I can live with a little bit. We were poor growing up. I didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so not having the ability to go out to dinner here or there, not being able to travel wasn't an issue for me.
Cool.
And my wife loves to travel and go do stuff, so it was harder on her than me, and fairly so. That's like she but you do what you have to do for a few years, and I tell people that you suffer for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really suffering. I mean, what is suffering really? I mean, it's just hey, I can't buy those fancy new shoes I want, or whatever it is, whatever that is that you do. But it was the right move.
Cool.
And she wishes she could have stayed home. It was really hard on her.
Yeah.
But she knew that at the time that that was the better scenario.
Yeah.
I mean, she really didn't have like I had a secondary thing that I could do and start to build, so that when the kids got into school, that I could even go back. Whereas if she lost her pension, and if it's like she didn't, any kind of part-time work for her would have been, being a waitress or something.
Exactly.
Whereas I could kind of build a business.
No, that's great.
So
you mentioned getting sober and stuff, and obviously that's been a big part of your story today, and you sharing your story, Marty. So where was what time frame, and what was kind of the impetus, and what did that look like for you getting sober, and kind of what does that mean to you up to this point in your life?
So there's a couple tiers to it. So I quit smoking marijuana probably by the time I was 20.
Okay.
I didn't care for it much anymore. It just put me to sleep. So I don't think I've had any marijuana for, I don't even remember the last time. I still might have been in high school, to tell you the truth. I don't know if I smoked it once I got out of high school. I kind of had slowed down. It was, and I had an incident with cocaine on my 22nd birthday, maybe, or 23rd birthday, and I blacked out. And I'm like, all right, that's enough. I don't need to do that anymore. So that was easy. So I haven't touched it since.
Yeah.
That was probably 1988 or 89, and it's like, all right, I don't need that. And it scared me.
Exactly.
So I'm easily scared.
Yeah, no, well, that's probably a good trait that
it's
you have.
It's a good trait.
Because
Yeah,
some
fear is
people
a good
aren't,
trait. Yeah.
They pay for it.
So I was happily drinking a lot.
Yeah.
Like a lot. You could, and somewhere the year I got out of PT school, first year of my job, like every time I drank, I had just violently hangovers in the morning, throwing up and everything. I was like, what the hell's wrong? And around April, it was right around the NCAA tournament finals, I remember watching with my buddies. I was like, man, I've had 2 days of just this worst hangover. And from that day forward, that whole month, I couldn't eat anything. I was eating cream of wheat 3 times a day because I couldn't stomach anything. And I finally went to see a doctor toward the end of the month, and I had some form of hepatitis. And it wasn't a viral. It was just my liver was just blown up and shot. So my liver enzymes were just through the roof. So I couldn't digest anything. I lost like 25 pounds. So I was down. I hadn't been that light since. I was down in the mid 170s.
Wow.
Looked like a ghost. And he's like, "Do you drink?" And I go, "Well, I haven't for a few weeks." And he's like, "Well, you shouldn't drink anymore because your liver doesn't like it."
Right.
So I was like, "All right." So I stopped.
Cool. So
May 1st. I call it April 1st, but it's probably more. I mean, the official would be more in May 1995.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Just quit.
Yeah. Just cold turkey, huh?
Just quit.
That's awesome.
Now, in the last couple of years, I don't crack my own beer. I'll taste my wife's wine.
Yeah.
Have a sip, taste her beer because I like the taste of it. But it doesn't. I could care less.
Yeah.
Like I have no desire to have a full beer, to have a shot of whiskey or nothing.
Yeah.
Just it has no effect on me. So.
Yeah, and I can relate. I didn't dive as deep as you did, but you know, when you're towards the end of high school and college and partying and drinking, and I'm 31, almost 32, and I haven't had a drink since 21. And like I said, I wasn't drinking like you were, but it's just I have no desire. You know, I don't like. I can go to a bar and hang out with friends that are drinking, but it's like I'm just gonna have a cheeseburger or whatever, and I'm good. Like there's no pull, and it just everybody's different. But I think for me, just being a teacher and trying to be a leader and example, and just being in health and fitness and kind of knowing some of the side effects and the damage it'll do if you're trying to gain muscle and all that, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a waste of money. It's just a waste of money. And
it's a big
makes you feel crappy if you have too much of it.
Yeah.
It's just the same story, a different day. You know what I mean, Marty? So
it's funny because I tell people, especially with eating, I say do things in moderation. Like if you want to have a little bit of cheese,
absolutely, yeah.
But I feel almost hypocritical sometimes because I don't drink,
right?
And I'm like I just cut it out.
Yeah.
But alcohol's a different deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with you go to the bar and have a couple beers, have some wine. That's great.
Yeah, I don't even do that.
For us personally, though, those are just choices and decisions we've made, which you just respect everybody's decisions, and it's good. So.
And not having a hangover for the last 33 years.
It's kind of nice, huh?
You're 20. Wait a minute, 33 years.
Yeah.
No. 20. 24
I don't know.
Years.
Hey, I'm not
24
a math
years. Sorry, 24 years this
good.
month. Yeah. I was thinking 10 years ahead.
It's okay.
But I feel better.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel most of the parts, other than some aches and pains of getting older, I feel crisp and clear most of the time.
That's great. So, That's great. I appreciate you sharing that because I know we all have different issues and struggles, and it's pretty awesome. And that seems to be a little bit of a theme, just as I'm thinking right now, of like you kind of doing whatever, and then you're just like, hey, you know what? Something's got to change in the college and all that, and then it's like drinking and go see the doctor, and it's like, well, I'm just done. So that seems like that's some sort of inner discipline or inner willpower or gift that you have, Marty. Is just like, hey, when you determine that you need to make a change or something needs to change in your life or in your family, it's like, I'm just going to go do it. And it sounds like that kind of brings us up to where you quit your job and you're like, this is what needs to happen. I'm just going to go do it. So that's pretty cool. So you quit your job that you had for 5 or 6 years. What happens next then?
Well, I started working at this guy's club, and it was a little personal training gym in this basement of this place, and it was kind of gross.
Yeah.
But I was able to see it. It took a little time. I started getting a couple docs I know would send me a patient or two here or there.
Okay. Yeah.
So I started slowly built up. I could see people in the afternoon. My wife would come home. I'd hustle over there, see people at night. And then to supplement, I actually got a call from my old boss. He's like, I need you, if you want, to go do this thing for us. And it was UPS needed a safety person.
Okay.
And UPS didn't pay me. My old company paid me a ton of money to go over there 2 nights a week from like 9 to midnight to walk around the hub of UPS to make sure people knew how they were lifting right, or if somebody had a bad elbow and what to do with it, and kind of preemptive first aid. Mm-hmm. So I did that for the next 4 or 5 years while I was building up my other business. So I actually had a pretty good check coming from that. It made me feel a little better.
Awesome.
Well, the minute he asked me to do that, I was like, well, that was easy. Because then I didn't feel so financially troubled.
Right.
And over the years, I built a little bit of business, but I was working for this guy. He was a tough guy to work for. And I didn't work for him. You worked in his space.
Okay.
And so I learned a lot from just being around the personal training industry for a while. So one of the other trainers and myself started talking, and we're like, we should just do this on our own. So February of 2004, we kind of got serious and we started looking around, and we didn't write a business model. Neither one of us were very good at like writing or reading or doing that stuff. We just sort of like decided this is what we're going to do. And it's funny, he's 6 or 7 weeks younger than me. We had the same experiences of a lot of our life growing up.
Yeah.
And we happened upon this place, and we had a realtor that helped us out, and we just started sitting down and doing business plan and how do we do it. And we found some trainers to come and work in here, and we opened September 1st, 2004.
Wow.
So the personal training industry at that time was a lot more static than it is now. We had big cable column, big leg press, and the extension machines, all of that, all the above. And we brought in 6 or 8 trainers, and they paid us rent. We paid rent here and paid off our loans. And we're fairly smooth and steady.
Yeah.
For the next 4 or 5 years, really nothing was going on until the biggest change in the 2 things happened at the same time. One was in the industry and one was with society, but the recession hit.
Okay. Yep.
In 9 and 10, right? It really, like, people's bank accounts went belly up.
Yep.
And so the need for personal training went down, right? Because people didn't have $50, $60 an hour to pay for a personal trainer.
Yep.
And even at that point, that coincided with, CrossFit started in 2010, but they weren't the first guys to do this stuff.
Right.
There was a guy named Jim. There was a website called, and the websites were pretty archaic back then too, which is funny. It's not that long ago. A website called Jim Jones, GYM Jones.
Yep, I'm very familiar with him.
Yeah, it was very cool stuff, and you're like, wow, that guy's cool. He's doing cool things. And so small boot camps started popping up around different places, and functional training kind of slowly, CrossFit started opening up, and everyone's like, well, we're not doing that because that's, even as a physical therapist, like most of that stuff's really aggressive and not really good for most people.
Right.
But the whole group concept changed, and the whole functional concept changed. So in 2010, I made some big changes around here, and it was a painful couple of years going from one model to the other because I didn't have any money to make this transition for marketing and for websites and all that stuff that needed to be done because it was kind of done on the fly. So it took a few years to kind of get to where I am now, and a little bit of struggle.
Yeah.
Quite a bit of struggle, but fairly vibrant now. And
for sure.
In the small group industry and functional training, and trying not to hurt people, and trying to be smart and trying to motivate people.
Now, I just want to touch on that struggle a little bit for those couple of years, because obviously you've got your own family. I'm assuming that your partner at the time, the guy that was kind of along with you, is he still kind of a part of it, or did he kind of take off?
We had a falling out in the middle of all of that, and that's what
Okay.
changed it, because he was more about staying the way we were,
Right. Okay.
and I wasn't, and I was the majority owner of the business, so I bought him out.
Okay. So during those years of having to transition from one fitness model to another fitness model, and then we've got the whole social media thing, which if you don't have a social media game within health and fitness nowadays, like you're going to be pretty irrelevant. You know what I mean? So I'm sure all of that's playing in. What was your mindset, Marty, during that time? Because you have your own family, you've got your kids, you've got bills and different things. So where were you at personally, kind of internally and mentally, during that time, and how did you kind of just stay focused and keep moving forward?
It was really hard. I had a hard time.
Yeah.
It was really struggle financially. I wasn't a trained. I'm not an NSCA guy. I'm not I was a physical therapist, and I wasn't a group class instructor, and I wasn't into designing these things, and they were new. And I'm more of a blockhead than a dynamic, course instructor.
Right.
And so it was hard to kind of figure out how to make that transition. It was a lot of sleepless nights, for a couple of years. I think I got more gray hair because of all that.
Yeah.
Because at 52, I still look pretty young.
Yeah,
so.
you look great, man.
But it was a lot of it's a fog because it was so uncomfortable and so hard and just a tough time. My kids were high school and middle school and trying to keep up with their world and missing out on a few things because I was here all the time fixing something or painting something or trying to figure out social media, which I was not good at because I'm not that's not my world either. Again, as a physical therapist, I can see the human body. Like I almost have X-ray vision sometimes. Now, I'm not saying I'm the best at it, but it's like that was what I'm good at.
Yeah, it's your profession. It's you've been trained in.
Having to like move on the fly and figure out how to do a business model, how to make sure your taxes are paid, how to make sure all this stuff is done was really hard.
Yeah,
because it's not in my wheelhouse whatsoever.
Right. But like kind of going back to that reading to introduce you and kind of open the podcast up, getting out of that comfort zone. Sometimes life will push us, no pun intended, outside of that comfort zone. And then there's other times where it's like we kind of realize like, hey, I'm comfortable right now and I need to get out of the comfort zone, so we have to kind of push ourselves. Yeah. In this situation, from my perspective, it sounds like life kind of just pushed you out of that comfort zone and you were forced to learn social media, how to train, group classes, kind of the whole business thing. So even though there were maybe some dark times and some anxious times and some tough times, when you came out on the other end, you were a more well-rounded man, a more well-rounded gym owner, business owner, what have you. Is that fair to say? And if so, share with myself and the listeners, Marty, maybe one lesson that you took from that time that you can just kind of like impart for us.
I'll have to think about the lesson, but you're right. I had to do things because it was forced on me, forced on me because some of my own doings, but also some of society's happenings.
For sure.
And I feel like I'm way better at all of this stuff. I still have a lot of faults as far as doing a spreadsheet or doing some social media or doing some marketing, because that doesn't come naturally to me. And so I still kind of struggle a little bit, and I've learned to hire and dole out some of those things to when I need help, so I'm not wasting my time doing my QuickBooks every week and learning that wasn't important that I do that. It was more important that I have my time for other things. But I think time management still is a little bit hard because I have so many things to juggle during a day, but I've learned how to definitely prioritize certain things and make sure I'm a list guy. I write my list every morning, what I need to do that day, who I need to call, or what I need to get covered that day. And so that has definitely been a huge piece for me, is that I have that. And I know some people don't have to do that because they just naturally know what to do, but I have these yellow sheets of paper everywhere that my legal sheet, and I write down, here, this is what I got to do. And it may carry over for the next day or two, and some I may prioritize different than others. But that has been a huge change in how I do this.
Well, two lessons that you just shared that I'm just going to repeat is surround yourself with the right people. That sounds like that's something you have to learn with this, social media and the right personal trainers and all that. And then prioritizing. I think those are two lessons that I and the listeners can take away from kind of that period of you kind of getting forced out of that comfort zone and being forced to learn some different things. So surround yourself with the right people and prioritize. That's great. So, all right, Marty. So we've been going over a little over an hour, so we're gonna start moving towards the end of things and wrapping things up. But there's a few things that I still want to touch on. Now, we talked about this for just a quick minute before the podcast started, and living in Colorado, specifically living in Denver, health and fitness is just, it's over the top. You know what I mean? I just saw something posted on social media the other day that I think Denver's the right behind Austin, Texas, as like it's the second best place to live in the United States. So, I mean, a lot of growth, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of health and fitness, a lot of gyms and these boutique training places and all that. So there's a very saturated market with gyms and personal training studios and all that. So, and probably you guys, opening 15 years ago helps, but how have you, or in your estimation, how have you guys been able to stay kind of relevant here in Denver and continue to have clients and kind of keep things flowing business-wise?
That's probably the biggest struggle. I mean, I don't have the funds to compete with Orange Theory or with Fit 36 or with Car Athletic Club. I don't.
Right.
And I don't try to.
Yeah.
When new people come in, one of our selling points is, hey, we're different. We do things different every day. I don't have a corporate overhead telling me what I need to do. My trainers are all very creative, and they're their own people, so that you're not just in line. Like each trainer has their own style and technique, and they write their own routines up for our group stuff. And then all the personal trainers, I don't tell them what to do with their clients. I've housed this place with all this creative equipment, and I tell people, if I see something that I like equipment-wise, I go get it, or if I don't like, the way things are going. So we make it so it's not this institutionalized, commercialized workout. Right. And I think that's a good selling point for a lot of people. A lot of people are like sheep. They go to Orange Theory, and Orange Theory is great. I'm not knocking it. It's a great thing. They're getting a lot of people doing things. Yeah. But they're very limited, right? You're going to run, you're going to row, you're going to do some dumbbells or some Bosu bowl or whatever. Mm-hmm. But that's what you're going to do every time you go in. Right. And you don't get that here. I may only use the rowers every 2 weeks. Right, yeah. You may only, but you're going to still get your butt whipped when you come in here. Exactly. And it's going to be different every time. And I think on the other end of that is kind of falls into this, is one of our taglines is sweat local. Like, I'm a local guy. Like, we're a little guy. I can't compete with those guys. If you like this kind of small, more intimate deal where you get to know who everyone is and you try and do things that way, then hopefully there's enough people out there that will keep coming in on that line, instead of going, well, it's maybe cheaper, or maybe they have better times for me to go over there, so I'm going to do that. But that's fine then go. If you like what we do, then you come here. Cool. And personal training is different because you schedule whenever you want. We have our group schedule, and it's not like going to those places where they have class every hour all day. I don't do that. Right. And I tell people that. I go, it's very specialized. We're very creative, and it's hard to recreate that all day long. Exactly. So you get in here, and you're going to get it. It's good, and then the next time you come in, it's going to be completely different. So great. So that kind of ties in, I guess, probably with retention and everything as well. And what I took away from that, Marty, is just like you know who you are, you know what your gym is and what you're all about, and you just kind of you stay in your lane. And I think that's really important for people as individuals, like personally, kind of knowing who you are and knowing what you're about, staying in your lane, but then also in a business sense, when you're an entrepreneur, it's like, okay, just stay in your lane, pick one thing, do that to the best of your ability. And I think over time, there's that domino effect of like, hey, if you just do that one thing to the best of your ability, there's going to be that domino effect. Hey, there's going to be other doors that are going to open eventually. Is that fair to say? Yeah. And we've fairly been consistent over the last few years. I'm not making these drastic changes. Right. I had learned, and I didn't get to this, but during some of those odd years, I tried to train groups of high school kids for soccer. I tried to do this and do that, and I was spread so thin that I had to stop and hone it back in. Right. And so love that. By 2015, I'm like, this is what we're good at. This is what we do. Right? And this is and we try to venture out. We'll do some outdoor stuff, and I had a group of us went and did the stair climb at the Republic Plaza last month. Yep, I saw that on Instagram. Yeah, and so we do stuff. We'll try and do stuff like that, but not. That's some of my social media and my marketing skills aren't great, so I don't push a lot of those things. All of a sudden, a couple days will pass. I'm like, oh, I didn't do that. Yeah, because it's lower on my totem pole of things, but that's okay. So, a couple more things here, and we'll finish up, but. You just kind of mentioned going, and I saw something
on your Instagram page at Push Gym, you guys went and like helped build a house or something, kind of like
Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah, some like community work. So what is the importance of when you have like a gym or a personal training studio? What is the importance of community?
Well, I think the community is built by who's coming in, right? And
exactly.
all these people have become friends, and they come in and they're familiar faces, and even new people come in and they're like, oh, this is pretty cool. Everyone kind of sits around, talks afterwards for a little while.
Yeah.
We're trying to do some stuff like that. It's really hard. I'm tapped on time, and I wish I had more time to do more volunteer work and stuff, but it's really complicated. From my perspective, I run the Neighborhood Merchants Association, which eats up my other free time, and so I just don't have enough time to do those things, and I don't like to ask my trainers to do them because I'm not paying them. They pay me to work here to pay rent, so it's not their place to do my dirty work. So if they want to participate, that's great, but they're here because they want to be a little more independent, and they don't want to have to work for somebody. So that I respect those wishes of those trainers, and so I just if they're interested in helping, and then I say, let's do this.
Yeah, that's great. But community, though, I think that community aspect of things is very powerful.
Yeah, that comes with just having that attitude toward that stuff. And having, talking about what people are doing this weekend. It's Friday night. Everyone's working out. What are you doing this weekend? Oh, I'm going to do this. Well, maybe I'll meet you down there. And people just start to kind of connect that way. Sorry, I couldn't finish.
You're fine. You're fine. We're covering a lot of different things, and I love it. I just like this whole sweat local thing. I really feel like that's something that you're doing a great job of, and your personal trainers and your community here is like, okay, we know what we're good at. We're going to stay in our lane. We've got this one thing. We're just going to do the best we can with what we have and to the best of our ability. And this whole local thing, and you've been here for a long time. You're established. You yourself personally are a local Denver guy. So that's going to attract a certain type of people, and that's gonna I think continue to move Push Gym forward and really help with that retention and things of that nature. So all right, so two more things I want to touch on. You're a husband, you're a dad. You mentioned your wife a little bit. You mentioned that the kids. Just kind of combining all of that family life together, Marty. What does your family mean to you as a man, as a business owner, if you don't mind sharing?
No, they're great. My family's wonderful, and my wife's family is amazing, and my wife is amazing. She's head of professional development for Jefferson County Public Schools.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so living with an educator, and she has 7 sisters, and they're all amazing. Big Irish Catholic family. We have, 25 nieces and nephews that have somewhere of 10 or 12 little kids of their own, and my kids have the best first cousins, and every Sunday night somebody has dinner somewhere, and anyone's welcome to come.
Awesome.
And it's just a really great, that's a community. It's amazing. And it's funny when I tell people that, like, what? I'm like, there's a lot of people around. We've recently become mostly empty nest.
Okay.
As both my kids are off, and my older daughter graduates from college in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And she's not moving home, and my younger one's going to come and go a little bit. She's in school in Portland.
Okay.
So we're having some life changes on our own of just adjusting. We sold our house after living in Platt Park for 23 years and moved to a high-rise apartment downtown. And so we're having all these different changes and experiences of where we live and where we walk to and where we shop.
Right. Getting out of the comfort zone again, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
But it was funny because it was a little bit at first out of the comfort zone, but the move change was easy for me. I really enjoyed it, and I don't have to mow the yard anymore. I don't have to shovel the walk anymore.
Oh man, yeah.
That was. I loved doing yard work, and I loved taking care of my house, but I was really tired. It became a chore instead of a passion.
Yeah.
And it was time. It doesn't mean we won't ever buy a house again, but we've had a couple of years of just this big adjustments. And I don't know that we're fully adjusted yet. I think we still are trying to figure out what all that means to us. And our kids are great, and our all the family's great. My brother's great. He lives in New York and has since for years, and my mom lives in Taos, and she's healthy and plugging along. So all is good.
Yeah. So I mean, just one quick thing, like just being a dad, because I've interviewed a lot of people, and a lot of them are married and or have kids and stuff. So kind of just like when you had your first child and stuff, and just kind of through the years, how did that kind of change you, or how did that kind of just reshape your life and your perspective on things in regards to the kids?
I don't know. It was like I didn't really think about it. It just became natural. Like here I am with these guys. Yeah. And I say this a lot, and that I didn't really have a dad. I had this other guy, Paul Huffman, who was around for a few years, and he was great. But really, there wasn't other than him. And I hear this a lot in a lot of communities where they didn't have a dad, so they're used to not doing it, so they leave they had no qualms leaving their wife or their kid. And,
right.
And that was the dumbest answer. Like it should be the complete opposite way. Like I didn't have a dad, so the last thing I want my kids to do is to deal with what I had to deal with.
Exactly. And
my life wasn't horrible growing up. I'm not saying that. My mom was wonderful. But it's not. It's definitely a better experience if you have them both there.
Exactly.
It's more well-rounded, and they should have a more well-rounded lifestyle. Having both visions of my wife and I are very different for a lot of ways that we treat them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not right or wrong. It's just we have a different view of some of the things. And
absolutely.
But I didn't even think about it. It just was so natural.
Yeah, that's
Once
great.
my older daughter was born, like I just completely shifted gears into being super dad, and I didn't try and brag about it or anything. I was just, it was what I liked to do, and it consumed me. So it was very good.
Awesome.
So,
all right. So last question, and I'll maybe rephrase it if you want me to, but what sets your soul on fire? What kind of fires you up? What gets you excited? What burns inside of you? What's your passion?
Well, I love to exercise.
There you go.
And
there you go.
It's really sad that I can't play basketball anymore. I have a bad shoulder and a bad knee, and I just can't do it. I enjoyed that more than anything for the years. I remember the last day I played too. Just I'll never forget it. So I'm just sad that it ended that way.
Yeah.
I do. I don't know if I have a passion. I like to cook a little bit. I'm not great at it. I like playing games.
Yeah.
We learned how to play Catan this year.
Cool.
I love playing Scrabble.
Yeah.
I play Words with Friends with like 5 people.
Yeah.
And I really like getting a big word one. I like rubbing it in. I love watching sport. I don't know if I watch sports as much as I used to. I love paying attention to them. The internet and not getting a newspaper's changed the perspective. And like college football or college basketball or football, both. Like a million games on in a week. There's too many, so I've just shut it out a little bit.
Yeah, I got you.
But like I love watching the NCAA basketball tournament. That's like one of my favorite couple of weekends of the year. Like it's so exciting to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I have one.
That's okay.
One thing. I love taking my dog for a walk.
Yeah.
Walk him. If I had more time, I'd walk him for an hour 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Just wandering around the neighborhoods, looking at big buildings.
Cool.
But I don't know that I can answer that clearly.
Oh, well, you answered it. You just there's multiple interests, so that's great. Yeah. That's great. All right, Marty. Well, that kind of wraps things up. Before I kind of send us out here, if you want, if somebody's in the Denver area, if they want to become a part of Push Gym, anything like that, what are kind of give you like your Instagram handle? How can people reach out to you and get connected with this community if they're interested?
The website's the easiest way. It's just pushgym.com.
Perfect.
And then everything, if you email anything off there comes to me, or my phone number's on there, my email address, and then our schedule, what we do. It's fairly clear. It's fairly simplistic because I don't want it to be real complicated. I don't want people to have to read, War and Peace just to figure out what we're doing. We're fairly simplistic because what we do is try and just get you in and do those things without a lot of fanfare.
Cool.
We do a little bit of an Instagram page. I'm not one that is out, as you saw. I mean, I like to post fun stuff, and it's a little different.
You keep it pretty updated.
Yeah.
You've got stuff on
We
there.
don't have 1 million followers, and I'm not concerned if I only got 100 likes or 30 likes.
Right.
I'm putting it up there because it's, that's what we do in this industry, and showing kind of how we're relevant still, and how we change and how we grow.
Yeah.
And a lot of clients like to see their picture on social media sometimes.
Yep. That's the world we live in now,
And
right? The selfie world.
Yeah. So, but we're here, and I'm not going anywhere, and you know,
cool.
We're in for the long haul.
What's for anybody in the Denver area? What's the exact address if they want to come check you out?
It's 38 East 5th Avenue. So
Okay.
we sit exactly in between Lincoln and Broadway on 5th. There's not much else here. We're in. It really doesn't. Our neighborhood doesn't really have a name. It's kind of funny. Baker, if you're on the other side of Broadway, it's called Baker.
Okay.
Where we are is kind of the Spear neighborhood. We're catty corner from Fox TV, in a huge old cool building with 35-foot high ceilings.
Yeah.
I don't know if I showed you the back yet. But
No, you have to
yeah,
you have
really
to show me
cool
that
here.
before.
So our space is really cool.
Cool, awesome, yeah. I mean, just the front here where we're at, it looks really great. So plenty of open space, plenty of equipment. So
yeah, showers and towels we stock
Awesome.
for everybody in case you got to take a shower before you go back to work, or if you got to go somewhere.
Great.
If you don't like our soap, I'm sorry. I do the best I can to buy some neutral.
Bring your own then, right?
Neutral soaps and towels, and
there you go.
Without trying to offend anybody. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, Marty, I just want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule on this Sunday and for sharing your story with the 127 Fit podcast.
My pleasure. It was great to meet you.
Cool. Yeah. So, all right. So, listeners, I just want to thank you again for tuning into the 127 Fit podcast. If you would like to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram. It's at 127 Fitness. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. My website, which is just writings, blogs, things of that nature, is 127fitness.com. And if you guys could please like, subscribe, share, and then most importantly, leave a review, especially if you are listening to the podcast in the iTunes app. That just helps the whole podcast thing kind of with listeners. And if you're searching, it's just kind of the way things work with those reviews, and especially a 5-star review would be great. If you think you would be a great guest, or if you have some people in mind that you think would be a great guest, please reach out to me through email, and that email is 127fit@gmail.com. Again, 127fit@gmail.com. And then something new, this is the first episode that I've mentioned this, but if you guys are enjoying the podcast, if you guys are on Instagram and things of that nature, kind of following what's going on in my life and with 127 Fitness, the podcast, all of that type of stuff, start using the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. That's kind of the whole thing behind this podcast, is being a leader, being an example, being someone to follow. So just start using that hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow, and then we can kind of start building a community with the people that are interested in 127 Fitness. And then per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, "If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small." This time until next time, I will catch you guys later.